there bets you can make knowing that maybe the way they approach the game is going to change?
I think so. I mean, in the sense that, not only what you discussed, Kate, but, let's say they're up, 28-3 in the fourth quarter, week 1 against the Browns, right? They're going to, Joe Burrow going to take every snap, if that's the situation, I don't know. So maybe they pull him a little bit early the first couple weeks. If it's something that's lingering, maybe it's not. He just comes out there and he's throwing dimes all over the field and it's, Joe Burrow like he was back in LSU, right? Setting records. It could go either way. You just kind of have to, wait and see. But I think, the main takeaway here is that you just got to watch the market as a better and try and take advantage of an overreaction. So if, okay, maybe it comes out that, Joe Burrow is going to, stay off the field for 2 or 3 weeks, right? If his props plummet, maybe that's time to hop in, knowing he's going to be back for the regular season. And a little 2-week calf strain doesn't necessarily mean it's going to impact him during the entire season, or maybe it's something where you hit the over in week 1, knowing that might drive that number down and, you take advantage. So I would just kind of sit back and see like, hey, if there is some injury news, if he is out for a little while, is there an overreaction in the market that we can hop in, take advantage of and play the other side?
So in week 1 against the Browns, pulling up these lines here, although it's off the board at BetMGM right now, that's why I'm not finding it. I believe the Bengals were 3-point favorites, and when I checked,
I think it was right in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Hours ago, it had flipped, and the Browns were favorites. I'm not seeing it on the board here at BetMGM. Or offshore. Well, it's other places, Bengals still 2.5-point favorites. So still kind of right around there. So things have not shifted as much. But, I mean, that's kind of to be expected. Like you said, not going to overreact quite yet. 0.5 point, sure. I'm not sure that really deters me from betting the Bengals or the Browns, kind of swaying my side 0.5 point right now, not quite knowing Burrow's status.
Yeah, now if this thing drops down and we're talking about, hey, Bengals -1, money line Bengals, then, hey, then we might be in business. We want to make a week 1 bet. But I'm not a big proponent of these week 1 bets earlier in the season. Last time I did that, we're going a couple years back, took the Colts, thought it was a great spot, going to, I believe it was San Diego then to play the Chargers. A guy named Andrew Luck retired in the last preseason game before the season started. All of a sudden, all the CLV went away, and I was stuck holding the ticket praying for Jacoby Brissett. The Colts ended up rushing for a ton of yards, ended up losing the game. I lost my bet, but if they had Andrew Luck, that would have been a winner. So I haven't gotten back into week 1 since then.
Just want better odds on him. Like, do you have any interest in betting Mahomes or Burrow, who are both at the top of the board, first and second, even Josh Allen at those numbers? Or if you're going to bet a future and into a market like this, are you looking for more someone along the Tua, which is 14-1, or Lawrence 16-1, something like that, and getting a little bit extra value there?
Yeah, I think at this time of the year, if I'm going to take a shot, I wanted to get back more value. Now, as we get closer to the season, I might be more willing to fire on Mahomes. But just because, I don't want to still have all this injury risk like we saw with Joe Burrow at this point of the year when I'm betting into a bet that only gives me plus 250 for a season-long prop, right? So I'm going to tie up money, until February for plus 250. I don't want to do that and inherit risk from now until September. So if the number is the same in September, I would hit it because I think Mahomes probably going to pass for the most yards in the NFL as long as he's healthy. But I do think when looking at the board, something people need to consider, Joe Burrow plus 750, that's a pretty big gap from plus 250. And I believe he was second in the NFL last year in average yards per game. He was 4th in total passing yards. But if you remember, because of the Damar Hamlin situation, they played 1 less game than everybody else. So that's something that people need to keep in mind. He didn't play 17 games like everyone else in the league. He only played 16, came in, I believe it was 3rd or 4th in total passing yards, but his average per game was second against Mahomes. So when you look at that information and you look at the gap in the odds, plus 250, plus 750, we got to make sure the calf is good, right? We don't want to bet into a bad calf, but, if the calf is clear, that might be a spot that makes some sense.
I totally forgot about that. That's a really good point.
16 games last year because they didn't make that game up because they couldn't figure it out. Remember, it was like this big controversy. And then the
Yep.
Bengals ended up getting hosed in the playoffs because they didn't have a chance to be the proper seed, and it got real goofy.
Right. He was supposed to be, paired alongside Xavier Howard and be one of the top cornerback duos in the league. Obviously, that takes a big hit if he's not back on the field until December. But, seems to be in good spirits. He tweeted that that end of the season push gonna be legendary. So at least he's has a positive mindset. Got to come back. Second half of the season, they can do some damage. We look at their regular season win total, 9.5. Asked me yesterday, I would have said over. I still think over isn't a bad look, but it definitely makes me want to pause and kind of reevaluate things because he's a massive part of that secondary, which is where they needed help in their defense the most.
Yep, and what did we talk about last night, Kate, with Sauce Gardner, right? Teams, if you only have one good cornerback, teams are going to attack the other guy, right? So that it really makes a difference with their defense not having those two corners as bookends, right? Now one of them's down, someone's got to step up. But listen, my initial reaction is I'm not backing down. I'm on the Dolphins, full steam ahead. I think they get over the 9.5 wins, but I don't know if it's just maybe it just hasn't settled in yet, because the defense, it's a big blow. A player like that, it's tough, and it's a very competitive division. But if you're asking me right now, I'm still comfortable with the Dolphins. I think they can win that division. I think as long as Tua is healthy. The good news is, whatever defensive struggles they have, the offense could be potent enough to overcome them all.
Oh, for sure. Yes, as long as Tua is on the field. Look at their throwing that they have. You have Tyreek Hill, Jaden Waddle, Raheem Mostert, Braxton Berrios. A lot of really good pieces that can score, that can, you can play a fast-paced, up-tempo offense with them. Dolphins reach the playoff, -110 on both sides, yes or no? Yes, to me, of course.
I like it, yeah.
We think that they're going to win the division, so not even be a wild card. They're actually just make it in the playoffs.
Yeah, you get the wild card wrapped up in there. So I think, it -110, I definitely see them being a playoff team. The AFC is competitive, but I think that, again, if you're on the Dolphins, if you're going to play over the win total, I guess there's a chance 10 wins doesn't get you into the playoffs if it's super competitive. But more times than not, that's going to be enough. And a lot of times with these win totals, teams don't just come in on the number. They're usually a couple games ahead of the win total when they go over, a couple games below when they go under. So I'm still comfortable with the Dolphins. I like what they did. And listen, if anybody can overcome this type of loss, it's Vic Fangio, right? So, one of the greatest defensive minds in the league. So they have that working for them. So I'm not ready to back off the Dolphins quite yet.
Some of the Heisman favorites this year come from the Pac-12. Obviously, Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman last year, he's the favorite this year over at BetMGM at 5-1. But then you have Michael Penix Jr. Is he someone that you would look at? Bo Nix is 16-1. I would probably choose Penix Jr. over Bo Nix, but either of those quarterbacks interest you in the Heisman market?
Yeah, the Heisman market's always tough because I think there's a lot of players in that 16 to 20-1 really have no chance. Last year Bijan Robinson was 16, 18-1. And I love Bijan Robinson, but unless he went for 300 and they beat Alabama, he's not big. So you're looking at guys who have a path to win it. And these quarterbacks are all interesting. I think the ACC is a little crazy this year. Clemson's as good as they've been in the past. So, you got Drake May sitting there at 18-1. I think he's interesting. Jordan Travis, value there. Jaden Daniels could either win the Heisman or lose his job in week 2. So I think Ewers is a little bit overvalued. The guy that's interesting to me is J.J. McCarthy. To me, this is the first year in a long time that Michigan has more talent than Ohio State. And McCarthy, remember, I know he didn't always play well last year, but it was his first season. Harbaugh runs that offense from 1975. But if they let him go a little, he played pretty well in the second half of that TCU game. So if they let him go a little more, and Michigan is undefeated at the end of the year, I think he's running.
Definitely, Tom. Let's talk win totals, right? And let's try and give the people something they might not get everywhere. You know, everyone's talking about all the top teams. I know you dive deep. I know you hit these win totals early because I follow you. Give me like a small program, an unassuming program that you think holds a lot of value in the market.
I'll give you two in the Northeast that start with U. UMass and UConn. I hit UMass right away. I hit UMass right away at 1.5. You know, they play Merrimack. Now, there's no gimmies with UMass, but assuming they beat Merrimack, right? They only got to win one more game. And they improved last year, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And you look at some of their opponents, you know, New Mexico and teams that they can compete with, Arkansas State, who's really bad. I think they can get to 2 wins. I think that's around 2 now. I wouldn't go over 2. I don't think they're going to be a bowl team. But the one I really like is 4.5, 5 is UConn. They have 9 winnable games on their schedule, and college is a little bit different than pro. Listen, I can't tell you a team's going to beat the Houston Texans. They're pro athletes. I don't know what's going to happen. But with schedule, you can kind of say, here are winnable games. Like they go to Tennessee. That's not a winnable game. Tennessee is going to smoke them. But their schedule is pretty easy, and they have 17 returning starters. They get a quarterback back from injury, so then they got a transfer coming in. They got depth at that position in case of injuries. You know, Jim Moore is building depth all through that program, both offense and defense. I think they get to a bowl game for the 2nd straight year. So I like over UConn and over UMass.